a GP in Wales has said that Wes Streeting's horrific anti-science ban on trans kids is causing harm to trans children. Who would have thought? So the headline is, GP criticises ban on puberty blockers in England and Wales. The GP said children were buying online homemade drugs or deliberately becoming anorexic. Trans children in Wales are taking extreme and potentially dangerous measures, including buying online homemade drugs or deliberately becoming anorexic because accessing help has become so difficult, a GP has said. She said, children with gender dysphoria who do not have the same level of access to healthcare as adults, which is basically nothing in the UK, are taking matters into their own hands rather than waiting until they're 18 to get care. Like, often when people talk about waiting for trans healthcare, they talk about it as if it's like, you know, wait your turn in the queue. Like, oh, you go into the post office and there's like 12 people in front of you in the queue. And it's like, oh, can't I just get to the front? It's like, oh, just wait your turn. That's how they talk about it. They do, like, even with adults, when you say like, oh yeah, the waiting list is like 7 years long, they just say, oh, you just have to wait. It's like, for 7 years. That's like 10% of people's lives to wait in order. And like, this isn't, as well, it's not like waiting to, you know, send a parcel or something that's like, oh, finally, that's out of the way. Cool, we're done with that. It's like literally waiting to get healthcare to start living your life in a lot of people's cases. You know, it's just like you're just in this limbo where you're barely even existing. You're just like, what's the point? You're just throwing away 10% plus of your life. But for children, it's even more extreme because obviously puberty is a thing which actually changes a lot of your body, unlike what transphobes would say, where they think that sex is nothing to do with hormone changes at all, and there's no sex characteristic changes during puberty or anything like that. But puberty and transition change your sex characteristics a lot, and that is incredibly distressful, which I can attest firsthand. So, of course, yeah, rather than of course people take matters into their own hands. That's just, like, inevitable. That was always going to be the case. And when Wes Streeting and Hilary Cass decided that they were going to just throw all of the evidence out, they knew this would happen. Like, of course they did. They just didn't care because they made no attempt to resolve this at all. And they knew for a fact it would happen. The GP, who has experience working with children, said the UK government's ban on puberty blockers has had a host of unintended consequences. I doubt whether they're unintended, but it certainly had consequences, including teens travelling to Northern Ireland or spending thousands of pounds on treatment through private providers. She said bans on treatment for teens are not only creating a generation with poor mental health and potentially physical problems, but leaving them only able to access treatment at a late stage when it is more invasive and costly and less effective. For some reason, this article has a lot of white space, so we're just going to skip past that, but it does continue. There it is. The ban on puberty blockers in England and Wales was made after Cass, blah, 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 it's a load of rubbish. We're going to look at that more in a minute. Said there was a lack of data, but that wasn't true. The GP, who was asked not to be named, but who treats patients in South Wales, claimed that a whole generation of trans children are being failed. She said this encompasses a number of issues, including continued ban on puberty blockers, which she said has removed a form of medication which she claims was reversible, although the Cass review said the effects of which on a young person's brain development were yet unknown. I'm not necessarily a fan of this, like, reversible angle, because it's kind of treating puberty blockers like, I mean, they are a compromise. They're a compromise for cis people who think that LGBT people don't know their own minds. I mean, they are reversible in the sense that if you take puberty blockers and stop taking puberty blockers, puberty starts. But you don't, like, get the time back. If you're on puberty blockers for 2 years, then you start puberty 2 years too late, or later, and you, like, don't get that time back from your life. And is there really justification for that when just starting with hormone replacement therapy might be more justified? Yeah. Anyway, this is leading to poor mental health and children being forced, she said, to remain in the body they do not feel belongs to them. Like, notice this thing this journalist is doing where they're saying what the person is claiming and then saying what the other person's claiming. Like, it might be a little frustrating for them to say, although the Cass review says this, but like, there's some kind of journalistic integrity here where they've tried to bring in both sides of like the argument, and without both sizing it, they're just saying this is what is said and this is what is said. Why doesn't like the BBC ever properly do this when they quote anti-trans hate groups? They usually they'll have like this big long thing from Sex Matters, and then at the bottom they'll be like, some trans people disagree. Why don't they say, you know, so-and-so from Sex Matters claims this. However, experts in the field say the opposite. Anyway, this is leading to poor mental health and children being forced, blah, blah, blah. The doctor warned it was leading to children dropping out of school, facing suicidal thoughts, and in some cases taking measures into their own hands to force puberty to stop. In the long term, it means that rather than receiving treatment before physical changes have occurred, their treatment is more serious and costly because physical changes have to be reversed, although by then there are often long-term mental health impacts. Yes, there are. It says there's a new clinic in Bristol, which is interesting. I actually didn't know about that, which isn't very good of me. Okay, I do need to find out more about that. Oh, it says the Bristol is one of 3 clinics offering specialist gender services, but focuses on talking therapy and is not currently able to offer medication. So it's completely useless then. Meow. Yeah, and it says the current climate means families approaching medical professionals for help are also now finding they are being referred to social services and being investigated for child neglect, which is disgusting. Like, anyone who's ever referred a family to child services for supporting the LGBT child should be like instantly fired from their job and be banned from working with families and children ever again. Like, absolutely disgusting thing to do. That's just such a spiteful, hate-filled, gender-critical person thing to do. They're like, oh, you support your trans kid? Well, I want to tear your family apart. I want to cause as much suffering to your family as possible, and I know that this is a way in which I can do it. Like, absolutely disgusting, spiteful thing to do. They know that their families love their children. You can see it. You can see when transphobes are talking about their children, and they're talking about them as, like, damaged and ruined and brainwashed and dead to them and all this kind of stuff. And you can see when supportive families are talking about their children and saying they love them and they're horrified at what they have to face in the world and stuff. Like, it's like night and day difference. And you know when someone is abusing their children and when someone is loving their children, and how different those things are. And they know that if they refer them to social services, it's going to be at best a massive disruption and headache for the families and incredibly stressful. I'm sure that they enjoy the idea of causing suffering. For this GP, puberty blockers are something which offers breathing space. She claims it's reversible. Yeah. I don't know of any other area of medicine where it's been done to us. Yeah. So she does talk here about different methods. Anyway, it's driving people to riskier methods. Among those of us who are involved with trans young people, we're quite concerned by the increase we're seeing in more dangerous forms of estrogen. I think some of it is because puberty blockers have been targeted and vilified so much that pharmacists are questioning them. Even if the patient is 17 and they're allowed to have their blocker, they will be questioned by the pharmacist, which is really horrible in a waiting room full of people at the pharmacy when you're being questioned as to why you're having that blocker. People are buying synthesized estrogen, which can be bought cheaply online and referred to as bathtub estrogen. It's so strong that it often blocks testosterone, avoiding the hassle of trying to act as a blocker. The effects are like a sledgehammer, though, so it will probably block the testosterone and give them really quick results, but a completely unknown quantity in terms of risk. Yeah, I mean, this is the same. Like, banning trans healthcare is going to be exactly the same as banning abortion or any other important life-saving medicine, which improves people's lives. All that's going to happen is the people who need it will suffer. Some of them will get caught in horrible legal conditions for absolutely no reason and be punished for just trying to exist. And loads of them will take things into their own hands and they will buy stuff off the internet that isn't regulated, or they will obtain it from a friend or something, and then they will do it without guidance and supervision and without checkups, and they will risk their health. Like, you can't, the classic line has been for ages, you can't ban abortions, you can only ban safe abortions. And that is true. We know when you ban abortions, the rate of abortions isn't really affected, but the rate of deaths and injuries goes up significantly. And it's exactly the same with trans healthcare. You can't, like, as much as these fucking freaks try and clamp down on trans people's lives, they are not going to be able to get rid of trans people. That is just not possible. It's the same, like they weren't able to get rid of gay people. We are just a natural part of what being a human is. And so all you'll do is you just have to force it underground, and you'll cause more suffering and pain to people you're pretending to try and protect. So whenever they give this justification about what's safe for trans people, that they want what's best for us, they know they're lying. You know they're lying. They are lying. They do not care. They're not interested remotely in trying to do the best thing for trans people. They're literally just trying to make things worse for you in the hope that it will cause you so much pain and suffering that you won't transition. Like, it's the Helen Joyce, these people are a huge problem to a sane world and they need to be prevented from transitioning, like, school of thought. It's the same as the anti-abortionist, like, where they consider women who've had abortions to be murderers, so then they suddenly then want the death penalty for them. Like, they're not pro-life. They don't give a fuck. They just hate the people who need this healthcare. The aim of trans-affirming treatment is to do it slowly over a period of 3 to 5 years to mimic normal puberty, but if you don't have this happening in a medical environment, people are forced into making it up as they go along. Yeah, I mean, of course. So it's just horrific.